Alright, so this is, I wanted to make a video about the 1.05 Zombie Dog Sacrifice build that I'm using on my Witch Doctor. Primarily I wanted to talk about this because I think it's a pretty unique build. I don't think there are a lot of people using this build, and there's good reason not to, I guess, but it's a great build. I like it. I enjoy it. And I think it's pretty interesting. I think it's more interesting than the sort of typical Witch Doctor builds involving zombie bears. I guess Acid Cloud makes a pretty good showing in a lot of builds. This build actually does use Acid Cloud, but it's used as a mana dump, and I'll get into that a little bit later. But basically, I guess this build is not that easy to get into for a couple reasons. Mainly, this build requires some items that are relatively expensive. Let's go on here and see how much a homunculus costs, for instance. So, summon zombie dogs. 19 seconds. Yeah, so these things are pretty expensive, as you can see. Although I guess this is a kind of a... This is not too bad, 15 million. Alright, anyway, I'm going to get into this game and talk about my items.
Let us fight this evil together.
Alright, so basically, this build is a Zombie Dog Sacrifice build. Oh, wow, I have all my items from the last run. You are what you do in this build is basically you spawn your dogs, spawn your Garg. Those guys run in, they tank for you, they take damage, they deal a little damage. And then you, of course, blow them up and summon more. As you can see, my zombie dogs has a cooldown right now of about 7 seconds. And basically that's the first thing I wanted to get into here, is that this build is very item dependent. It's probably the most item dependent build in the game. You have to have a homunculus, and that homunculus needs to be at least... I would say try for 19 seconds or 20 seconds. You know, as you can see, they're kind of expensive. I got this for about $20 on a Real Money auction house, using, of course, money I generated from finding in-game items, and that was in 1.04. The homunculus is kind of a new item that didn't exist when the game launched, so this build didn't exist when the game launched because when they did the pass on legendary items, this was one of the items that they showcased as one of the new ways they were using legendary items to enable builds. And they said, "Oh man, if you're a pet witch doctor, you're gonna love this homunculus. It's gonna be amazing because it's gonna give you a low cooldown on your summon skills," and that's exactly what the homunculus does. So my homunculus has 19 seconds cooldown reduction of zombie dogs and 16-second cooldown reduction of gargantuan. It's a relatively good one. Like I said, this was kind of a top-end homunculus back in 1.04 when I got it, because when I heard about the 1.05 changes, mostly the changes to items, I realized, oh, homunculuses aren't going to drop in Inferno anymore, and I don't think they do. And I realized that I wanted to try this build out, and I wanted to make this, so I got one then. So that's the first thing you need to make this build work, is a good homunculus. You also need a Visage of Gyua with Zombie Dog cooldown reduction. This is an 8-second Zombie Dog cooldown reduction Gyua. These aren't that rare anymore. 1.05 made class-specific items drop a lot more often, and legendaries drop twice as often as they did before. So there's a lot more of these things for sale. So it's not as hard to get one. I spent probably $20 on this Visage of Gyua back then, and that was when gold was more expensive. So you can probably get one a lot cheaper now. You're going to want at least 8 seconds on this. With 8 seconds on my Visage and 19 seconds on my Homunculus, my cooldown is about 7 seconds on Zombie Dogs. The third item that you need, but I have not been able to obtain myself, is one of 3 different items. You have a choice between a really, really expensive Mara's Kaleidoscope amulet with Summon Zombie Dog's cooldown reduction, or a Stone of Jordan with Summon Zombie Dog's cooldown reduction, or a Skull Grasp from 1.04 with or above with Zombie Dog's cooldown reduction. All these items are very, very expensive. The cheapest Stone of Jordan I've seen was 100 million gold buyout. The cheapest Maras I've seen was something like 350 million gold buyout, which I don't know why that's more expensive than this stone, because it's probably worse. And Skull Grasp, of course, is a pretty expensive ring as well. I want to get one of these, but I have not been able to pick one of those up yet. And right now I'm kind of broke. I only have about 5 million gold, and all my real money, auction house money, is gone, so I need to find some good items before I can make any more big purchases. With that said, though, if anyone wants to donate one of these items, like mainly a Stone of Jordan, I'd be most interested in, with 7-second cooldown reduction for Zombie Dogs, I'd welcome it, and I would make another video detailing how that changes the build then, because with one of those items, 7 more seconds essentially, I would have a 0 cooldown Summon Zombie Dogs, which would open up, well, it would be a big DPS increase at the very least. Anyway, so yeah, you gotta have a Visage of Gyua with cooldown reduction, Homunculus. Both of these items are extremely important for this build. You cannot do this without them. Mostly because Summon Zombie Dogs has a really long cooldown of 45 seconds. So these items enable you to cast it more often, which means you can blow up the dogs more often. My weapon is a Sunkeeper. So before this, I was using this Echoing Fury. I thought the Fear would synergize with my build sort of as a crowd control measure, so that if my dogs weren't attacking, enemies would be feared and such. And it sort of worked that way, sort of didn't. I'm not a huge fan of the Fear because it is a displacement crowd control effect, and it often displaces enemies up into your grill, wherein they will attack you. So when an enemy is feared, it runs in a random direction, and often that is towards you, which this is a very tanky Witch Doctor build, or I have my Witch Doctor built in a way that makes him tanky, because I think that, you know, it synergizes with the dogs and with the Homunculus and stuff like that. But I eventually, just today, I replaced the Echoing Fury, with obviously with the Sunkeeper. This was a very expensive Sunkeeper, about 30 million. But you know what? I'm happy with it. I think that Sunkeeper is maybe an undervalued item right now, or at least it's hard to fit into other builds, I would say, because it's got pretty good damage for a one-hander. But the fact that it gives a lot of Magic Find, which is great, but it only comes with 2 random mods. 3 random mods? Oh, maybe 3 random mods. In any case, it's not easy to find a Sunkeeper with a lot of combat stats. So you're not going to see a lot of, like, say, Whirlwind Barbs running around with this because they're going to have to sacrifice a lot of DPS or survivability to be able to use Sunkeeper. Like, really the only class that can use Sunkeeper well is a mercenary, like Cormac. I'm not sure he can use maces, but maybe he can. I think he can. Or a witch doctor. And in this case, lucky you. You're a witch doctor. Or you should make a witch doctor. Anyway. So yeah, Sunkeeper, very good. I love the magic find. I got this one with a socket. It's got damage against elites, which is great. My Stone of Jordan is an Acid Cloud Stone of Jordan. One day I want to replace it with my sort of best in slot zombie dog cooldown reduction Stone of Jordan once I find one of those. The rest of my gear, I'm going to include a link to my profile so you can check it out. Basically, I focus on intelligence, vitality, resistance to all elements. Armor is always good. Magic find, of course, and health and gold pickup radius, because that synergizes with my passives, which I'm going to describe in a second. I also use these Ina's pants, which is kind of an oddball item. Namely, they're a monk item, but I use them for the movement speed and the attack speed, as well as critical hit chance. And you can put int gems in them, so it's not a terrible item. It doesn't have any Vite, and it doesn't have any resistance to all, which is a bummer. Before I was using these pants, which is Vite, resistance to all, magic find, and pickup radius. I think the movement speed is worth it, though. I think. Anyway, skills. Let's talk about skills here. So, I use Firebomb with Flash Fire. This is an AoE skill. It's got a really nice fluid animation. It's casts very fast. It bounces between enemies and does damage to everything in a group. And it's kind of an interesting skill. It looks like a direct damage skill, but I think it functions closer to a damage over time skill because it bounces between enemies. And it can bounce up to 6 additional targets. So every time you throw one of these, it's going to hit at least 6 enemies, and it's going to do quite a bit of damage while it's bouncing around, even though the last enemy doesn't take the whole, like, even though each additional target takes less damage, it's still quite a bit of damage at the end of the day. So that, along with Acid Cloud, are my two mana dumps. I use Blob Bomb because it can sort of approach enemies once you lay it down, if they move out of the way or they're running away from the dogs. This was more important when I was using maybe the Echoing Fury because they were running around feared all the time, so the blobs would have to follow them around. But I like Blob Bomb. Really, it's your own personal choice as far as your Acid Cloud rune. They're all pretty good runes. This is just the one I like. With Summon Zombie Dogs, I use Final Gift, so that they have a greater 15% chance to drop health globes, which is great because it gives you life, it gives you mana. I don't have any life on hit, and I don't have any lifesteal because I don't need it. I can just pick up the health globes and keep moving. Spirit Walk, I use Healing Journey. You have to have this skill. As much as Blizzard wants us to get away from defensive skills and passives, or at least they want them to feel, they don't want them to feel like they are necessary. I think as a Witch Doctor, any Witch Doctor build, you have to have Spirit Walk because you have to have something that can get you out of Vortex, you have to have something that can get you out of jail. If you're frozen, you can escape with Spirit Walk. You go into Spirit Walk to nuke enemies when they are reflect damage, otherwise you'll kill yourself, etc., etc. This is basically a required skill, and I could not see myself going without it. With Sacrifice, this is, the core, this is the big deal. This is the big skill that makes this whole build work. And to be honest, it's not a very powerful skill. I mean, it is a nuke with no cooldown and no mana cost. It is a free nuke, but it requires you to have dogs out. So basically, your main source of damage is tied to how many of those really expensive items you can get, which is very Diablo-esque, I guess. But more so than any other character class, again, you are tied to your items because your nuke, if you have those items, you will have a free 0 cooldown nuke that can be used over and over again and deal massive damage. If you don't have those items, well, you can't use Sacrifice because you can't summon dogs fast enough, etc., etc. My rune, I use Provoke the Pack, gives you a 5% damage increase for every zombie dog you sacrifice, and the buff lasts 30 seconds. So along with Zombie Handler, which allows you to summon 4 zombie dogs, that is a 20% damage buff that is available, that has 100% uptime. So, and as you can see, I have my dogs up now. You look at my damage number over here. I'm going to sacrifice them. And I have the buff. It doesn't even have to hit enemies. You can just, your buff stays up for 30 seconds. And that buff is refreshed every time you sacrifice your dog, so it's up 100% of the time. With Gargantuan, my Garg is my tank, obviously. And I use Big Stinker. I think Big Stinker seems to handle aggro better than other types of Gargantuans. I think the AoE damage that he puts out not only synergizes with the build's overall theme, which is AoE damage, but it also kind of keeps enemies drawn to him because they're taking a lot of damage from the Garg at all times, so they want to attack him. Which helps a lot because you're sacrificing your dogs, and every time you sacrifice the dogs, the amount of targets on the screen gets a lot smaller. Passives are Grave Injustice. Whenever an enemy dies, you get cooldown reduction on all of your skills, which allows you to Spirit Walk more often, so you can use it more often to escape. And you get 2% of your life and mana. So in addition to all the health globes that I generate from sacrificing my dogs and or killing enemies, I'm also getting a lot of life and mana from Grave Injustice, which is a nice big help. Tribal Rights obviously is required, reduces all your summon cooldowns by 25%, and Zombie Handler, 4 dogs is a giant DPS increase. It's not reflected on your character screen, obviously, but that's what increases your DPS by a lot. So I think that's all I need to say. And I should really get rid of these items. Oh well. Anyway, I'm going to go out, show you some gameplay here. This is Monster Power 2. I originally filmed, I've filmed a couple of these already, trying to figure out the right one that I want to post on YouTube. But before I was playing on Monster Power 1, and I feel like people are gonna watch that and be like, oh well, any class does well on Monster Power 1. Ooh, frame rate issues here. Sorry, Frapses. So as you can see, I do a lot of damage. I can deal with this stuff pretty quick. You can take a lot of damage. I have some pretty high resists. Speaking of which, I didn't go over that. My resistance is 700 resist all, basically. I have almost 36,000 life. I have something like 23 plus 7. I have 30% increased damage to elite monsters and a 4% reduction of damage from elite monsters, as well as 26 pickup radius, and 22% movement speed, and something like 305 on Monster Power 2. I have 305% base magic find. So I'm just going to go through. I'm going to kill some mobs, show you what it's like fighting elites and normal mobs, and have some comments. I'm gonna comment on some of the skills I use. the genius of flash fire on Firebomb is that you can stand anywhere, you can fire it at the ground, it will bounce to enemies, and it will bounce to their friends. You can fire it at them. You can fire it around corners, you know, if... As you can see, I'm not even clicking on those enemies, but it still hits them, because it's bouncing around. It's the reason why I like it. So here's an elite. As you can see, I can deal with the teleporter stuff pretty well. Oops, I got my hands on the wrong buttons here. So these are some knockback enemies, kind of annoying. They knock back your dogs right before you sacrifice them, blah blah blah. But as you can see, I do pretty good damage. I can tank hits. I can sort of stand here next to my dogs. Pick up all the gold and the health globes. I use Lob Blob Bomb as a mana dump. So you know, I'll just dump it over here. I use it as a mana dump basically because I don't have the Stone of Jordan that I need. If I had that, I would be sacrificing my dogs every time it was up, which I do now, but it's not up all the time. And you gotta be kind of careful the way you sacrifice your dogs, because again, you're losing your tanks when you do that. So it's high risk, high reward play, which is one reason why it's really a fun build. Dogs do great AoE damage. With these enemies, you can't really tell because they're not standing. They're succubi, so they basically run away. But with elite mobs that stand next to each other, your dogs, every time you sacrifice a dog, well, every time you sacrifice all 4 of your dogs, they will all explode and they will hit every enemy that's in range. So right here, all these enemies just got hit for 400,000 damage when I sacrificed my dogs. And some elites, you know, are going to get hit with more damage than others, because a lot of elites like to spread out or run away or run through whatever. So basically some pros and cons of this build. The cons are that you lose out on damage with your homunculus because it's got low DPS, low damage. Int and Vit, it's not great for damage. It's got resistance to all, which is great for you, but not for damage. And I don't think it can spawn with crit chance, so you lose out on that. Oops. Tower of the Cursed here. Another con is that you're extremely item reliant. Without these items, you can't use this build. So it's more of a hobbyist build. I have something like 600 hours into this game.
Need more time. Hell returns to me.
And so, you know, for me, I play this game. I have a Barb, which I enjoy playing. Oh man, this got wiped out. Yeah, mortars are really annoying in this patch, although honestly I think Wallers are probably my most hated monster. And of course you're still a Witch Doctor at the end of the day. We're not the best class in the game. I would say that, I was reading something today on Reddit. There's like 8 barbs for every 1 Witch Doctor, Paragon level 100. So, you know, I'm sure we'll eventually get some buffs, hopefully before an expansion to this game comes out, but right now we serve as kind of a tanky caster role. which is good. You gotta have one of those. This build especially is tanky caster. I know I just died, but it's kind of a fluke. I don't die too often. And I honestly, I die as much on my Witch Doctor as I do on my Barb. So yeah, you walk around, you sacrifice your dogs, guard tanks. Your Merc, you can use whatever you want. I usually use Linden. I'm using the Enchantress because I decided a couple days ago to try out a Maximus I got on. I hate these little things coming out of nowhere. As you can see, I do pretty good damage to these guys.
Hell returns to me.
It's always nice to go into Spirit Walk and get some life back. Nice to have that extra tank on the Maximus, but not required. Like I said, I usually use Linden. Oh, well, look at that. Frostburns, okay. This is the first pair of Frostburns I've ever gotten, though, so. The pros of this build are, obviously, as you've seen, you can stack tons of Magic Finds. I have something like, what, with 4 stacks, I have 365% Magic Find. You find, obviously I have 2 legendary items just in my inventory, just from runs today. So you find lots of good items. It's a fun build. It's unique. You look awesome. Look at this. Got my posse here. You got my dogs and Sunkeeper, and I got like my Gyua like looking around. You look awesome. It's fun. You're not mana dependent for your damage. Like I said, sacrifice is a free skill, so assuming that you can get the items together to make this build work, your nuke is essentially free. So, you know, when other Witch Doctors are spamming zombie bears and they run out of mana and they have to back off, which is not a problem when you get to the sort of god gear that a lot of Witch Doctors have. But if you don't have godly gear, it's nice to have a mana-free nuke. Obviously, it's a fun build. You're very tanky, so you can take some hits. You can be kind of lazy. You know, sit back here, toss fire bombs. You don't really have to aim. You can, if you're bad, you can toss fire bombs over here. They'll just bounce over. You got Spirit Walk. Whenever you get in any kind of danger, you just go into Spirit Walk. You heal a little, bring your dogs back up. And you got a lot of health globes coming in from the final gift dogs. Since they drop them so often, you're doing a lot of healing in between everything else. Again, this is monster power too, so the enemies aren't terribly scary yet, but
I am hurt.
kind of walk around here and heal a little bit.
I have been healed.
There we go. I don't know, I think I'm fighting like 2 or 3 packs here at once. Oh, my guard seems to have perished in the fight. These guys are knocking my dogs back every time I sacrifice them. Yeah, there's a couple packs here, that's the problem. Wow, I'm gonna get chain frozen. But like I said, you can take some damage, so that wasn't a terrible... wasn't a total disaster.
Need more time.
Since you're stacking so much Magic Find, you got a lot of rares dropping. A lot of legendaries. I usually get before I got the Sunkeeper, when I was at about 340 Magic Find. Maybe less than that. Yeah, 340 Magic Find. I was finding a legendary like once every 2 to 5 runs. Since I've gotten the Sunkeeper, I've found a legendary pretty much every run. So again, the Sunkeeper works great on Witch Doctor, and especially this build. And so yeah, that's this Summon Zombie Dogs Sacrifice build. Hope you guys enjoyed watching this video. And honestly, if you have any questions, my plan is to post this on YouTube and then post that on Reddit. So I'm hoping that I'll be around to answer any questions or talk about gear or whatever it is people want to talk about. And again, if anyone has Stone of Jordan they want to let go at a good price, at a ridiculous price that you shouldn't let go of your Stone of Jordan at, please get in contact with me. I would love to try this build out with 0 cooldown instead of 7 seconds. So yeah, this is my Witch Doctor, and thanks for watching.